Good morning, Year 4, and welcome to your math session for Monday, the 18th of January. Okay, you know exactly how we start our math lessons at the moment, recalling our times table facts. So draw yourself a grid and get ready. Here we go. Remember to draw out neatly with a ruler if you can, to write out the numbers correctly, and then to pause this video and set a timer perhaps to really try and push yourself. You should try to get these done in 2 minutes or as close to that time as you possibly can. If you think you are going to do it quicker than 2 minutes, then can I suggest that you set a timer so you can work out exactly how long it takes you, and then each day try to beat that time and beat your personal best. Okay, pause the video now, draw out your times table grid, and then give it a go as quickly and as carefully as you can. Off you go. Right then, well done. Hopefully your brains are nicely warmed up on this Monday morning. Well done if you did this around about 2 minutes. Extra well done if you are now so fluent in your times tables that you are less than 2 minutes. And if you are over that, then don't worry, just try to challenge yourself to bring your time down every day, and then eventually try to hit that 2 minute marker. Right, let's see how you did then. So at this stage, I'm not going to read out all the answers. You're going to pause the video and then you can mark each one to see how you did. If there are any that are incorrect, don't worry, don't rub them out. Just put the correct answer next to it and try to remember for next time. Okay, pause the video now and mark to see how you've got on. Super, well done, especially well done if you got all of those correct, or if you've got the most number correct that you've done so far. Okay, let's have a little look at what we're doing today. So our learning objective this morning is to identify equivalent fractions in relation to halves and quarters. And you can see there that I have coloured, emboldened, and underline that word equivalent. So it's going to be really important in our lesson today that we know and understand that. So we'll talk about that in a bit more depth in a moment. But we have 3 steps to success. Number 1, I can use the bar model to draw fractions. Number 2, I can identify fractions equivalent to a half and a quarter. And thirdly, I can suggest other equivalent fractions. So fractions of your own. Okay. Let's get started then. Let's delve into the meaning of equivalent. So before I share the slide with you, just take a moment to think. And if you've got a grown-up or somebody nearby, pause the video and have a think. You might like to write this down perhaps, or even draw it on a piece of paper. But what does the word equivalent mean to you? What does it look like? What does it actually mean, especially when we're thinking about maths? What does that word equivalent mean? Okay, pause me now, have a think, and jot your thoughts down, just like you would do on a whiteboard at school. Off you go. Okay then, let's have a look, shall we, and see what this word means. Okay, well done if you've got any of these ideas down on your page, or if you even drew something similar to here. So equivalent. It reminds us of that maths word that we know really well of being equal and equivalent. So if something is equivalent to something else, it means that it is equal in value or amount. We could also say this as being the same as each other, equal to, or in a really short mathematical way, we can show that something is equivalent by using an equals symbol. Okay, so you can see in these pictures here, these 2 sides here of these rocks, they are equal to each other, they are balanced. We can see that this pizza, it's the same amount of pizza, it's equivalent, but there's a different way of writing out the fraction. So a half is the same as 2 quarters, is the same as 4/8. So a half is equivalent to 2 quarters, is equivalent to 4/8. And again, we represent that with our equals symbols, meaning the same as. Okay, let's keep that in mind because we're going to be looking for equivalent fractions today and also drawing them out on our bar models. Okay, let's dive into step number 1 then, shall we? Okay, on here, I'm going to talk you through now how we're going to draw out a half with a bar model, a quarter with a bar model, and an eighth with a bar model. Now, some of you may remember how to do this already, and that's great. Okay, if you're not sure or need a reminder, then I'm just going to stop the share now and I'm going to bring you to the board. Okay, so we're going to write out or draw out with a bar model a half, a quarter, and an eighth. Okay, so if you want a challenge, and if you think you can remember how to do that, then pause me now and check afterwards to see if it's correct. If you're not sure, keep me playing, and then we can draw this out all together. Okay, so let's write out first that we're going to be writing and drawing out a half. So we're going to be showing halves. Now, when we draw out our bar model, okay, especially with fractions, we're first of all going to draw out the whole bar. Okay, so let's draw that out together. And that's one whole, our whole bar. Now, to show that we have half, we know that half means in half, in two pieces, two equal pieces, two pieces that are the same as each other. So we represent that with a line down the middle, okay? And each of these represents one half, one piece out of two, okay? And another thing that we can do together now, once you've drawn that out, is to shade half, okay? To show what half looks like. Okay, so do that now for me. So we've represented half in a bar model. Now, some of you might be used to drawing out fractions like this. Where you have your whole represented by a circle. You might have even related that to the idea of a pizza. You've got two pieces and you've got one of those two pieces shaded, so you've got a half there, and that's absolutely fine. What I have found though with fractions is that you can't always very easily represent a fraction using a circle. Okay, so when, for example, you get to sevenths or ninths and things like that, it can get really tricky, which is why I prefer to use a bar model, because with a bar model, you can draw your bar as long as you need to, and you can separate it into as many different pieces equally, much more easily than when you're using a circle. So just so you're knowing for today, and always with fractions, when I'm working with them, I always represent them with a bar model. Let's jump to quarters now. So we start by drawing out our whole bar. Notice I'm keeping it equal to this bar here. That's really important, that my whole doesn't change size. Okay. Of course, if you have a ruler, you can be really neat and accurate with this and draw them out carefully. So I know that 1/4 means one piece out of 4. So I know that I need to divide my bar into 4 equal pieces. And I can use my knowledge as well that a quarter is a half of a half. So watch what I do here. Okay, I draw a line down in half like this again, and then I find halfway between this point, halfway between this point. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 equal bars, okay? And then I write down here that I want to show 1/4, okay? And I can show that like this, okay? But what I'm looking at today is I'm looking at equivalent fractions, okay? So I want to know what is equivalent to or the same as a half, okay? I see my half here. And then if I come down to my quarters, I can see if I shade in that 2 of these 2/4 are equivalent to a half. Okay, so 2 are equivalent to a half. So a half is equivalent to 2/4 and vice versa. Let's try this again, but this time let's have a look at eighths, shall we? Let's split our whole into 8 equal pieces. So remember to draw out your whole exactly the same length as you have done before. Okay, our whole doesn't change. And then I need to then divide this into 8 equal pieces. Let's use the strategy from before. Let's divide it first of all into half, then let's divide it into quarters, and then again half of those will be eighths. We can check. 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 equal pieces. So I've got eighths here. Now let's have a look. I'm looking for equivalences. Okay, looking for equivalences here. So I can see 1/2 is equivalent to 2 quarters, is equivalent to 1, 2, 3, 4 eighths. 4 eighths. There we go. And another way that we could write this down is this. 1/2. Remember we talked about the equal symbol meaning equivalent to. 1/2 equals 2 quarters, which is also equivalent to 4 eighths. So that's one way that we can write it out here really, really clearly. Okay, and we can see these are all in line. So they are all equivalent fractions, they are the same. Okay, let's go back to those slides. There we go. Okay, so we've now worked out how many quarters and eighths are the same as 1/2. Okay, we know that 1/2 equals 2 quarters and 1/2 equals 4 eighths. The equal sign means equivalent or the same as. Fantastic. Let me just go onto my slideshow. Brilliant. Okay, here we are. So let's follow these instructions together now, shall we? So on your piece of paper or in your book, it says draw a bar and divide it into quarters. I'm just going to rub my board whilst you do that. Okay, so draw your bar out and divide it into quarters. Fantastic. Okay, so yours should look a little bit like mine here. I think you can see that from there, can't you, with my 4 pieces? It says, now draw a bar showing eighths. Okay, so just like we did before, showing eighths, that bar split into 8 equal pieces. So draw that neatly underneath, again with a ruler if you have one. Do your quarters first. And then halve those quarters. All right. Let's follow the next instruction together and then I can show you my board to you. Should look like this, okay? So we should have our 4 quarters there, clearly marked equal sections, and then our bar split into 8 equal sections underneath. And then our question here is, how many eighths are the same as 1 quarter? So the first thing that we're going to do, how many eighths are equal to 1 quarter? First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to shade that 1 quarter. I'm going to write it here, 1 quarter. And now I want to see how many eighths are equivalent to that, are equal to that. So I go underneath to my eighths bar, okay? And as I've drawn it out the same length, all of my pieces will be accurate. And I can see here that 1 quarter is equivalent to 2 eighths, 2 pieces out of 4, 6, 8, 2 pieces out of 8. So 1 quarter is equivalent to 2 eighths. Okay, can you see that? Make sure you've drawn it out nice and clearly. Okay, let's see what we're doing next. How many are the same as 3 quarters now? Okay, pause the video at this point and see if you can then draw out and show what 3/4 is equivalent to in eighths. How many eighths are the same as 3/4? Pause it to give it a go. If you're unsure, then wait for me and then we'll go through it together. Okay, right, back together then. So how many eighths are the same as 3/4? So we had 1/4 here, but now this time we're looking for equivalent to 3/4. So I'm just going to change my picture here. If it's you at home, I would draw out a new one so you can see, so it's really clear. So let's take a look, shall we? First of all, the thing that I would like you to do today, if you need to draw out your fractions, is to shade in that 3/4. Okay, so we've marked 3 out of our 4 quarters here, 3/4. And so now I need to see how many quarters are the same as my eighths here. How many eighths are the same as 3/4? Now I can see, because I've drawn out equally, that it is 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths are equal to 3/4. So I can write my 6 in here. And again, underneath, how would I write that out as a fraction? Have a go. 3/4. 3/4 is equal to 6 eighths. Now I wonder, are you spotting a pattern here with our numerators and our denominators here? That's the numerator, the top of a fraction. That's our denominator, the bottom of a fraction. I wonder if you can spot a connection between 3 and 6, and that same connection between 4 and 8. There's a pattern here. I wonder if you can see it. Links in with the idea of being equivalent. Well, let's have a see. I know that if I double 3, my answer is 6. And if I do the same to my denominator, I double 4, well, that equals 8. So actually, if I multiply by 2, same as doubling, the top and bottom of my fraction, I can work out an equivalent fraction. And even some of you might then be able to think, I don't need to draw my bar model out anymore. Now I know this, I can keep doubling and I'll keep finding equivalent fractions. So 3/4 equals 6 eighths. And then if I multiply by 2 again, I can find another equivalent fraction, which is equal to double 6 is 12, double 8 is 16. So 12/16 is exactly the same as 6 eighths, is exactly the same as 3/4. It's the same fraction, just written a different way, the same amount. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Hopefully you're really getting a good understanding of this now as we build towards your task. Oops. There we go. So just showing you there in that picture there, the 3/4 are shaded, and that was equivalent to the 6 eighths down here. Okay, let's move on. So it says here, write at least 2 more fractions equivalent to a half. So let's take a look at this one, shall we? It says here are some. Right then, let's take a look. So we have got our half here shown in yellow. That's the same as shading. And our half is equal to, here we are, 5/10, 5 out of 10. And that is also equivalent to, if I can keep that up here, brilliant, 3/6. So 3/6 is equivalent to 5/10, is equivalent to 1/2. And finally, can you work out this one here before I reveal it? What's this one here? How many are shaded out of how many in total? Well done if you worked it out. 10/20 is exactly the same. And look, some of you might spot, if you double, if you multiply by 2, 5/10, that equals 10/20. So there, fantastic. Okay, I wonder if we can think of any more. Let's just write these down for a moment, shall we? This time I'm just going to write them out as number fractions rather than bar models. Let me see, because this is a little extension task for some of you that are really confident and do really well with this morning, to really stretch your thinking and your mathematical understanding with fractions. So we know that 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6, is equivalent to 5/10, is equivalent to 10/20. So I wonder if you notice something now, another pattern between the numerator and the denominator. We've got 1 out of 2, 3 out of 6, 5 out of 10, and 10 out of 20. Can you spot a pattern there? What's the same about those fractions? Well done if you've got it. The denominator is double the numerator. The numerator is half of the denominator. 1 is half of 2, 3 is half of 6, 5 is half of 10, 10 is half of 20. So when you're finding fractions equivalent to a half, as long as your numerator is half of your denominator, that will always be equivalent to a half. So for example, if I take 20 here, 20, well, I know that 20 is half of 40. So 20/40 is also equivalent to a half, because 20 is half of 40. And if I know that, then I know that 40/80 is equivalent. I would also know as well then that 40/80 is equal to 4/8. 4 is half of 8. I can divide that by 10. As long as I'm doing the same to the numerator and the denominator, that's brilliant. It keeps the fraction the same. So here, we could carry on forever. We could have 100, 200ths, etc. Now, I know when you're doing fraction work that it's really tempting to write out 100 million over 200 million. Okay. Allow yourself one of those if you'd like to do a really big one. But what I would suggest, so that you kind of see those times table connections, you can use your doubling and halving knowledge, I would be sticking with 2 and 3 digit numbers if you're going to do this challenge later on, so that you're really having to use your mathematical understanding and don't complicate yourself with lots of big numbers with lots of digits. Okay, let's go back to our slides now, because we're nearly at the stage where you need to try your task for today. There we go, we've already talked about what we noticed, don't we? That the numerator is half of the denominator. The top is half of the bottom. Okay, finally, let's do this as our final challenge. How many 16ths do you think are equivalent to a half and a quarter? A half and a quarter. So how many 16ths do you think are equivalent? Okay, so what we're going to do, okay, is we're going to check it before we have a look on these slides. Let's just do this one together, shall we? So we're thinking 16ths. We haven't drawn a bar for 16ths, so let's have a go at that, shall we? I want to know equivalent to a half and a quarter. Okay, last one together before we set you off on your challenge. Let's rub the board. Whilst I'm doing that, you start drawing out your bar. We need to divide it into 16ths now. We need 16 equal pieces. So let's give that a challenge then. Let's give that a go. So here we go. Let's draw that a bit more clearly. Lovely. Okay, always find our halfway first if we're using an even number. So let's see. Okay, that's going to be my halfway point. Halve it again. And again. Gives me quarters. Remember that one? And then halving again. My quarters gives me 8ths. 2, 4, 6, 8. So then halving again will give me 16ths. Okay. There we go. All the way along. Make sure you draw these out as neatly and accurately as you can. Let's just double check we've got 16 here, and you double check on yours as well. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. I've got 16 equal pieces there. And now the first question was, how many are equal to a half? Okay, so I'm going to write down half here is equal to, how many 16ths? Right, well, I think what I need to do here is use my times table knowledge and use my doubling and halving knowledge as well. So let me think, half, this number needs to be half of this number. My numerator needs to be half of my denominator. So I'm thinking about 16, and what's half of 16? Well, I think that's 8. Let me shade in 8 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And look here, if I draw out a very quick bar here, and I show my halves, actually look, that is equal. Now, for some of you, when you are working out these fractions today and equivalencies, you may find it still useful to use a bar model, and that's brilliant. It doesn't matter if you're drawing those out to help you, as long as your answer is accurate, that's the main thing. Some of you may feel more confident with your knowledge of doubles and halves and of times tables to work out these just using the written notation like this. So 1/2 is equivalent to 8/16, and I can prove that. Okay. If I multiply by 4, it doesn't matter what we're multiplying by, as long as I do the same to my numerator and my denominator. 1 times 4 is, what is that? Dearie me, Mrs. Fowler. Good to check for little mistakes like this. 1 times 8, of course, is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. Done the same to my numerator and denominator. So 8/16 is equivalent. You can see it here. 8 of my 16 pieces is exactly the same as 1 out of 2 pieces here. They are equivalent. Okay, so this time we were looking also for quarters, weren't we? So I'm going to just rub that for a second. And let's draw a bar model for quarters. Halfway again, half of a half over here. Fantastic. So this time we want to know the equivalent for 1/4. We know that, let's put it down here, 1/2 is equal to 8/16, because 8 is half of 16. This time we want to know 1/4. And how many 16ths is that equivalent to? Well, let's take a look, shall we? What if we can use our knowledge again? Just like we did with halves, where our numerator is half of our denominator, I wonder if it's the same with quarters. Okay, that our numerator, is 1/4 of our denominator. So we can divide our denominator by 4, and that will give us our numerator. Well, 16 divided by 4, I know, equals 4. So I think it's going to be equal to 4/16, but let's just check on our bar model. If I can shade in 1/4 here, I have 1/4. And I'll show you 1/4 on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4/16 is equal to 1/4. So I can rub that and replace it with a 4. So 4/16. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So there's a connection there. If you're starting to get this idea, as I said, using your times table knowledge and your doubles and halves, then do continue having a go with this way. If you're still needing to draw out the bar models, this is a fantastic way to represent your mathematical thinking. Okay, it doesn't mean you're not any good at fractions. It means that you're finding a really good strategy to visually see the fractions to help you. Okay, so don't think, oh, I've just got to write it out this way. Use the strategies that you know to draw them out. Okay, right, that's all we're going to look at in our input today. So let me go back to sharing the screen with you. We'll check that we're correct with that knowledge, and then we'll look at your task for today. Okay, here we are. This is exactly what we drew out, isn't it? So we can see here that we have our 16ths and halfway. So we're finding equivalents to a half here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. 8/16 is equivalent to half because 8 is half of 16, isn't it? And here we go. Here's our 16ths again. Okay, and here are our quarters. 1/4 is shaded here, and that is equivalent to 1, 2, 3, 4/16. Okay, because 4 is 1/4 of 16. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Brilliant. Okay, now it's over to you. This is your turn now. You have 3 challenges for this morning. Number 1, okay, and number 2 all relate to the fractions that you can see here. And a copy of these will be below this video. So if you'd like to print it out, then you can. If not, it'd be a little bit bigger so you can write down the fractions in your book carefully. Number 1 says, draw a circle round all the fractions which are equivalent to a half. So have a look and think about what we talked about in terms of our numerator and our denominator. Okay, and think about all the ones that are equivalent to a half and circle them. Fantastic. Then for question 2, it says draw a square round all the fractions which are equivalent to 1/4. Okay, so you're going to show the difference between equivalencies to a half and equivalencies to a quarter by drawing round with a square for the fractions that are the same as equivalent to 1/4. Again, think about the connection between the numerator and the denominator. The numerator should be 1/4 of the denominator. Okay, the denominator should be 4 times as big. Fantastic. Now, for some of you, that will be a really good challenge for today. For others, you may feel that you are ready to take on a little bit of an extra challenge here. So your extra task here, your extension over here on the right-hand side, is to write at least 2 more fractions equivalent to a half and 2 more that are equivalent to 1/4. You don't have to stop at 2. You could continue on in a pattern. Okay, you might like to do this as a mind map. So you've got half in the middle and you are pulling out all the other fractions that are equivalent to a half, and the same for a quarter as well. Okay, just to really, really secure and cement your understanding on halves and quarters and their equivalent fractions. Okay, can't wait to see what you do today. Make sure whatever you do, you take a photograph and send it in to our email addresses. And of course, we look forward to seeing you sharing it in our Zoom meeting as well today. Right, pause the video now so you can get on with your main task. This should take you about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're going to do the extension as well. And then when you're ready, come back to here and we'll go through the answers together to see how you did. Right then, mathematicians, as Mr. McCandless is telling us here, the answers are incoming. So make sure you have a pencil or a pen. Something that's a different colour is usually really helpful so you can see. And remember, don't rub anything out, don't cross anything out. All right, if you've got something incorrect, don't worry, we all make mistakes. I made a mistake on the board earlier, didn't I? It doesn't matter as long as we learn from them. So if you don't get something quite right, you haven't spotted all the correct equivalencies, then just put the right answers in with your different coloured pen. Okay, here we go. So all the fractions that are equivalent to a half are these. We have 2/4, 20/40, 6/12, 3/6, 4/8, 8/16, 10/20, 5/10, and 9/18. Really, really well done if you got all of those. And if you didn't, no worries. In the next few days, we'll be looking at fractions again so we can work on that together. Okay, so equivalencies to 1/4. These are all the fractions that are squared or put inside a square. So we have 5/20 at the top there. We have 2/8. We have 3/12, 10/40, and right down the bottom, 4/16. And again, really well done if you've got all of those correct today. If not, go back and correct them. Okay, And maybe you want to re-watch part of this video to go through your understanding again to make sure that you've got it. Okay, and if you're really unsure, again, of course, you can email us or you can talk to us in the Zoom meeting later if there's any questions that you have about this work. For those of you that were ready, felt ready for the extension today, there's lots of different possible answers, endless possible answers for equivalent fractions to a half and a quarter, but here are some examples. So you've got 6/12ths, 7/14ths, 8/16ths, 11/20, 22ths, 22nds. I don't know how you say that fraction, but there's lots of them. Okay, the best way to mark your work is to check that your numerator is half of your denominator. All right, and of course, for it to be really marked by your teacher would be great. So send in any work that you do on that one, particularly to your teacher. And underneath here for fractions equivalent to 1/4, some examples are 6/24ths, 7/28ths, 8/32ths, 9/36ths, okay, etc. But again, as long as your numerator is a quarter of your denominator, so your denominator is 4 times as big as your numerator, then that is equivalent to 1/4. As I say, send it in for us to mark and have a look at as well. And you never know, you may well find your work on Mrs. Blake's slides in the assembly on Friday, celebrating our excellent work. Okay, really well done for today. Send us your work, talk about it in the Zoom meeting, take pride in it. Okay, and really well done on our fractions work today. Have a think back to the learning objective, thinking about equivalent fractions to half and a quarter. Have a bit of a reflection, think how well have I done today against those 3 steps. Okay, and if you have any questions or anything you're not sure on, make sure you talk to us later on the Zoom or send us a question on the email and we'll get back to you. Brilliant work for today. Well done, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.